Massive top speeds, mouth-watering looks, limited production and extensive prices. A formula that normally leads us to call a car a supercar. When was the first supercar created and what was it? How have supercars developed over the years? And what is the real definition of supercars? How's it going, people? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be running through a bunch of those questions and more as I go through the history of supercars from the beginning all the way through to 2020. It's a slightly different type of video to my normal ones, but I wanted to start doing a couple of history-related videos, so let me know in the comments if you enjoy it. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff, and without further ado, let's get into the video. The definition of a supercar is highly debated. My definition is very liberal. If it even slightly fits into what I said at the start of the video, then I'm pretty much happy to call it a supercar, or at least consider it as maybe one. But for some, the title supercar is only given to a very special set of cars. Even dictionaries differ on their definition, some saying that cars have to have centrally mounted engines, which excludes all of these cars currently on screen right now. Others saying they are high-performance sports cars, which could include all of these cars on screen right now. And in my opinion, the best definition actually comes from Urban Dictionary, as it notes a whole bunch of the key features of a supercar. Performance, rarity, the fact that the term is subjective, and also the fact that people can change their minds over whether a car is a supercar as time goes by. Whatever opinion you have on what makes a supercar, let's have a look at how this started and where it's developed to. As if the definition of a supercar wasn't hotly debated enough, what constitutes the first ever supercar is just as debated. Was it the Lamborghini Miura or Ford GT40 of the 1960s, the 300 SL of the 1950s, or even as far back as the 1909 Blitzen-Benz, which held the land speed record of 126 miles per hour at the time? Let's look at the facts. The Blitzen was made specifically as a race car to beat the world high-speed record. So if we applied the same logic to today's cars, we probably wouldn't consider the Bloodhound SSC to be a supercar. And anyway, the first reference to an actual supercar came 11 years after the Blitzen-Benz. This came with the Ensign 6, which appeared in the Times newspaper in the UK on the 11th of November 1920 with the words, "If you are interested in a supercar, you cannot afford to ignore the claims of the Ensign 6. It had a 6.7 litre high-performance engine for the time and was similar to the Bentley Speed 6. But just because the word supercar was used, it doesn't necessarily mean that the car was a supercar. In the 1920s and 30s, owning a car really wasn't the norm, so having any kind of car was a pretty big flex in and of itself. For that reason, the ultimate cars of the time were actually grand tourers that could take you further distances in more comfort. That's very different to today, where the ultimate cars are considered to be supercars or hypercars or whatever. Following World War II though, with people wanting to escape the grim history of the war that they just lived through, people started to like the idea of enjoying themselves out on the roads in a nice fast car. And so came the emergence of the sports car. These are much more akin to what we see today in terms of being light, luxurious, high performance, and generally strong for the time. These include the Ferrari 116S, the Aston Martin DB1, Alfa Romeo 6C, Porsche 356, and the Jaguar XK120, which was arguably the gold standard of a sports car in that era. These sports cars opened the doors for manufacturers to start thinking about how they could develop this further. How could they beat the other manufacturers at making fast, sporty, and luxurious cars? It's pretty simple. More power, more performance, and more luxury. This leads me to what I consider to be the first ever supercar. Some people might disagree, but I believe the 1954 Mercedes 300 SL to be out here as the first proper supercar, in that it was the most advanced, most expensive, the fastest, and most beautiful car of its time, and is loved and renowned even through to today. It had flamboyant, iconic doors too, which is a staple of exotic supercars today, and by stepping above the competition, the 300 SL showed manufacturers that there was an appetite amongst the wealthy petrol heads for more cars like this, and opened the doors for the emergence of some undisputed supercars in the 1960s. And the 60s certainly started to show the signs of modern supercars. So I mentioned the GT40, it was a homologation car for Le Mans, and Ford wasn't a brand that was renowned for luxury cars. In many ways though, it still fits that definition I mentioned at the start of the video. Its legacy has led to cars like the Ford GT and the Ford GT, and they are very much considered to be supercars. Then along came the Italians. The Lamborghini Miura, first produced in 1966, was actually made to be more of a race-inspired grand tourer than the straight-up race car for the road. Those beautiful curved lines and transversely mounted mid-place V12, the bonnet and the boot that open in an extra manner, and the fact that only 764 were ever built. Clearly well on the supercar route that we see today. But the 1960s also brought a different type of car that also took the supercar name. Over the pond in the US, the cars that we would call muscle cars, they were starting to call supercars. In US car magazines from the 60s, there are references to the 60s supercar, Supercars, the Supercar Club, and the Supercar Street Racer Gang market segment. Cars were even directly named supercars, like the AMC SC Rambler, where the SC stands for supercar. But one of the reasons for the decline of the muscle car at the time also almost put a stop to the supercars that we know today, the fuel crisis. Prices of oil quadrupled almost overnight, and the huge engines of muscle cars and these budding supercars were no longer economically viable for even the wealthy individuals that would otherwise have bought them. This brought about much smaller cars with smaller, more practical engines and fuel bills. But supercars powered through this, and they returned with a different trend: sharp, rugged lines, unlike those that we saw on the Miura. The 1971 Di Tommaso Pantera, the 1971 Maserati Bora, the 1976 Lotus Esprit, and the 1978 BMW M1 are all great examples of this change in design language, but it's the 1974 Lamborghini Countach which remains the poster car of this era. Alongside Lamborghini though, Ferrari started to push their cars into this space, like the 365 GT4, which was a mix of those curved lines of the 60s and the sharp ones of the 70s. All this growth in sports and supercars meant that in the 1980s, when a financial boom hit, resulting from the deregulation ideology from Reagan and Thatcher, supercars gained in popularity and increased in price. This in part led to the introduction of the hypercar market, as manufacturers wanted to really go above and beyond for those wealthier clients. And it was a great opportunity to test out new technology. Ferrari came through with the F40, the first production car to do over 200 miles per hour, and just before this, Porsche had already hit us with the 959, which could do 197 miles per hour. Both had twin turbocharged engines which helped them to put that power right up. What these cars did is set the standard for supercars in the following years. They had to have more power, hit higher speeds, and look even more beautiful. On a level below the F40 though was the Ferrari Testarossa. It was criticised for lacking performance and not feeling as focused as other supercars of the time, but the key factor in its success and the reason why it remains a well-known car to today is that beauty factor. Iconic looks seem to be enough to ensure that a car would remain loved for years to come. This may be why the 288 GTO lacks the love and attention that the Testarossa gets in popular culture, despite being a far more capable Ferrari. In the 1990s, the number of manufacturers embedding supercars into their lineups increased, while the purpose of supercars started to grow. The Honda NSX showed that supercars could be reliable and used daily, while hypercars proved that they could be the exact opposite, but be ridiculously quick, like the XJ220 and the EB110. This purpose also spilled out into other types of cars, like the super saloon segment with the Lotus Carlton, for example. The 90s really cemented supercar as a household name. Some standout cars include the F50, the GT1, the F1, and the Diablo, amongst many others. Some petrolheads name these to be the most pure supercars available, which has definitely helped make their prices increase year on year a ridiculous amount. Look at the McLaren F1 for example. Tell me when the McLaren P1 is going to be anywhere near as valuable as that car. I don't know if it ever will be, but we'll have to see. And so because the 90s cemented these cars, by the 2000s supercars were pretty much expected from most luxury manufacturers. The two factors that dominated the 2000s were decreased weight and increased power, and these trends trickled their way down to the more modest offerings by manufacturers. Performance SUVs became a thing, for example. Following these trends, Ferrari and Porsche pushed the boundaries of power, with the CGT putting out 605 brake horsepower and the Enzo dropping 660. Madness for the time. We even got the first electric supercar, the Venturi Fetish. As the hypercar top speed race began between Koenigsegg and Bugatti, more affordable supercars also hit the market, like the Audi R8 and the Nissan GTR, both sitting on that grey area between super high performance sports cars and supercars. Manufacturers that hadn't previously tried to put out supercars also tried their hands. The Lexus LFA, which is different to pretty much every Lexus to have ever existed, remains iconic, if only for that incredible sound. I know I'm biased because it's the era that I grew up in, but the 2000s for me is the absolute golden era of supercars. You've got some very special cars like the Enzo, CCX, Zonda, SLR McLaren, LFA, CGT, Veyron and Murcielago, while having the higher production supercars that are still sought after today, like the Gallardo, R8 and GTR. Despite this being the golden era of supercars, in my opinion, the 2010s have probably seen objectively better supercars for people to go out and buy. Once the market began to recover after the recession in 2008, brands began to carve their own niches into the supercar sector. Ferrari uses its wealth of history to create an exclusive set of supercars where you need to be on their list to get the best tier of cars. Lamborghini, now owned by Audi, continue their tradition of making a car, then making a bunch of special editions of it, but maintaining those mad designs that they're renowned for. McLaren started pushing out a new car almost yearly, which some say eroded the brand, while others say it has pushed the manufacturer to make some insane new cars. Porsche stuck to making the 911 as good as it can possibly be, with the GT3 and the GT2 RSs, and the new technological advancements available began to make their way into hypercars, like the hybrid engines in the LaFerrari, P1 and 918. And now we sit on the horizon of electric supercars like those from from Rimac, Lotus, Tesla and Porsche. We're watching the advent of supercars as we know them up until now, and a potentially massive change to what makes supercars special in the not too distant future. I hope you guys enjoyed this brief history lesson. Let me know in the comments if you did, because I want to do way more videos like this in the future. But otherwise, a massive thank you to the patrons. Remember to like, comment and subscribe for more weekly car content. But as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Listen.